Welcome to the debate. Today, we're challenging one of the most fundamental assumptions in Western thought, the very architecture of reality itself. For centuries, the default view has been what you could call the materialist frame, that reality is, what it's made of, and it's governed by objective physical laws.
Right.
But today we're asking if that physical foundation is really the most primary lens for human experience.
Exactly.
The question we're addressing is this. For a living, conscious agent, is the action-oriented frame, the one that structures reality based on relevance, on purpose, on goals, is that a more primary lens than the materialist frame?
And I think it's important to frame our positions.
Please. I'll hold that for us. The immediate and most potent truth is the primacy of action. The world is fundamentally organized by our aims and our motivations. That makes the enacted world, the world of purpose, our primary reality.
And I'm going to assert the opposite. While that world of action it's undoubtedly urgent, the objective, tangible substratum, the indifferent physical world, that remains the ultimate foundational reality. It is, the necessary stage that makes all of that action and the subjective frame that comes with it even possible.
Okay, so let's be clear about what we mean by primacy. For me, reality is a dynamic framework shaped entirely by goals. We're not passive receivers of data. Action precedes and predicates perception. You can see this in something as simple as vision, which feels very receptive. It involves constant unconscious micro-movements of the eyes, they're known as saccades, that direct our gaze toward what matters. This is a subtle but I think profound gesture of the will. It decides where meaning and relevance will be found in this just overwhelming influx of information.
I acknowledge the mechanism of selection you're describing, but I struggle with the hierarchy you're imposing. If those mechanisms, the saccades, the neural filters, if they are fundamentally biological functions, doesn't that inherently root your so-called will in the very material machinery you're trying to subordinate?
But the selection aligns with our goals, not just our hardware. Think about a common experience, like navigating a crowded, noisy restaurant. The environment is just dense with chaotic, infinite detail. The scrape of a chair over there, a conversation at the next table, the precise angle of a ceiling fan. Yet your consciousness instantly filters all of that out. Why? Because your current goals, sustaining a conversation, ordering a meal, they demand that you prioritize relevance. Our survival hinges not on dissecting the atomic composition of the chair, but on how we act in the world. So, relevance, which emerges from our need to move and to achieve, that's what fundamentally organizes our consciousness. The lived architecture of our reality is built from priorities, making the enacted world, the one structured by purpose, more fundamental than the indifferent physical world.
That action-oriented view, it is compelling on the level of experience, I'll grant you that. But it seems to confuse the operational map with the underlying terrain. The material world, atoms, particles, physical laws, that is foundational for the cosmos. While your world of action is immediate and urgent, it is structured entirely by the limits and possibilities afforded by the objective physical world. The objective world provides the boundaries, certainly, but meaning is what structures our experience within those boundaries. But the boundaries define the possible range of meaning. Phenomenologists like Husserl and Heidegger taught us that objects manifest as affordances. They appear as tools or obstacles relative to our aims. Let's go back to your chair. In an emergency, that chair blocking an exit instantly becomes an obstacle. It evokes frustration, and that frustration is calibrated to your goal of escape. But the chair's fundamental identity as a mass-bearing object, defined by its consistent physical composition, remains completely unchanged. It doesn't matter what the emergency is or how frustrated you feel. That physical identity precedes the action-based meaning imposed upon it. So the objective reality provides the indifferent canvas. Action may paint the picture of meaning, but it is always contingent upon that underlying physical structure.
Let's shift a bit from the content of perception to the actual structure of intention. I believe the action-based worldview is best captured by what's called the cybernetic frame. You can think of it as the brain's operating system for intention, a concept really crystallized by Norbert Wiener. This frame models existence as a constant loop. You have a starting point, point A, a desired destination, point B, and then the strategies bridging that gap. This dynamic loop of aiming and adjusting, well, that is the essence of navigation, making action the organizing principle of awareness. And emotions in this scheme, they're not just feelings, they are practical trajectory adjusters. Positive feelings signal, hey, you're making progress, validating the frame. Negative ones warn of deviation or failure, demanding a course correction.
That's a highly structured and an elegant model for self-correction. But I have to ask, what enables the cybernetic frame? What feeds it its initial destinations? Motivations like hunger, territorial aggression, or just basic curiosity. These are mediated by ancient material brain systems, the hypothalamus, for example, and by complex neurochemistry. Researchers like Gray and Panksepp showed that dopamine, far from just being a pleasure chemical, actually underpins the drive for exploration and pursuit. So if these motivations, these instinctual goals, if they originate in the biological organism as a physical mechanism, doesn't that just reinforce the primacy of the material machinery that gives rise to the aims in the first place? The cybernetic structure, powerful as it is, it just looks like a complex function of the material substratum, not its independent replacement.
I'm just not sold on that line of reasoning, because the phenomenological perspective compels us to look beyond mere biology. We're talking about experience, which is fundamentally intentional. It's directed towards significance. If a sudden noise indicates a threat, the material world instantly shifts from being a set of neutral objects to being a landscape of potential affordances, a hiding place, a weapon, an escape route. The chair becomes an obstacle, not just materially, but existentially, because it's linked to our goals. The significance determines our reality. It overrides the mechanical coordinates or the immediate state of the dopamine system. The world only lights up in our field of attention when it carries meaning relevant to our survival or our purpose.
Okay, but let's look at the durability of this system. If reality is organized by these potentially fragile, action-determined frames, how does it maintain stability against pure relativism? You argue that stories are the architecture of perception, mapping journeys from chaos to order. But if the frames are mutable, and meta-stories often trace the collapse of those frames, like the fall in Eden showing the failure of a prior organizing principle, how can the action-oriented view claim primacy over objective material truth, which offers a durable, non-negotiable anchor? The material world, it just doesn't care about our goals, and that indifference is its strength.
The durability isn't in the frames themselves being static. It's in the process of frame transformation and correction. Stories provide crucial navigational tools for confronting life precisely because they describe how to transform failing assumptions. The action-oriented moral framework is inherent in this. Consider the Greek term hamartia, often poorly translated as sin. It literally means missing the mark. It's a failure of aim. So moral misalignment yields unacceptable meaning and chaos, and practices like confession, repentance, atonement, these are fundamentally about realigning the frame toward a higher aim. The restoration of meaning happens through corrective action, not by altering the physical coordinates of the universe.
That's a compelling argument for moral utility, sure, but it highlights a profound internal instability. The material we're considering suggests that human motivations often function as competing subpersonalities, an inner council of desires, the impulse toward chaos, the drive toward rage. These temporary governing intelligences construct alternate, often conflicting realities. If the guiding structure of perception is an inner parliament prone to the kind of ideological possession that thinkers like Nietzsche warned against, then relying on action alone to define truth is inherently precarious. The materialist worldview, by contrast, grounds reality in something external and consistent, regardless of what the inner council's volatile state might be, or what story it's telling itself.
But the goal isn't to eliminate that inner counsel. It's to harmonize it into what we might call a wise counsel. And this requires setting stringent constraints on our goals. The optimal trajectory demands that the aim must be sustainable, improving, social, and enthusiastic. The psychologist Jean Piaget observed that children's play achieves this harmonious integration, balancing challenge and capability, which signals correct action. This striving for alignment is the search for a trajectory that genuinely beckons, characterized by a state of durable significance. It's a kind of coherent, self-renewing pattern of existence, and the ability to generate such a meaningful, self-correcting reality that demonstrates a superior utility of the action frame.
I agree these criteria, sustainable, improving, social, enthusiastic, are excellent descriptive criteria of well-being. They describe the optimal function of a biological system, but they remain descriptions of outcome, not proof of ontological primacy. We are debating what is fundamental. And on top of that, the search for the proper aim often chains upward to mystery, revealing implicit structures that just recede into the unconscious. We know our immediate, concrete aims, but the deeper architecture that gives rise to them, we can only sense it by its effects, we can't directly apprehend it. If the deepest aims are ultimately inaccessible and wrapped in mystery, how can action, which has to be concrete and visible, be the primary reliable foundation of reality?
Because the architecture is revealed through the consequences of misaligned action. Chaos breeds when the aim is wrong. Meaning is restored when the aim is corrected. The structure is lived. We are compelled to interpret, to respond, and to choose. And it's the immediate necessity of that choice that makes action primary.
And that action is always, inexorably, limited by the sheer physical facts of the universe, which provide the objective criteria for what constitutes success or failure. You can aim to fly, but gravity, well, gravity remains indifferent.
To conclude, I think the framework for a purposeful life is undeniably governed by the structures and frames we choose. The quality of our existence depends entirely on choosing and aligning aims so that perception, action, and meaning converge, creating a world of profound significance where pathways beckon us forward.
And I acknowledge the powerful and, yes, compelling reality of the enacted world structured by goals. However, I must reaffirm that this purposeful, subjective world is fundamentally reliant on the objective, material substratum that defines its mutable laws and physical boundaries. The debate really remains whether the indifferent stage or the crucial drama played upon it is the most primary description of reality.
This exchange, I think, confirms the necessary tension between the objective physical world and the subjective world of meaning.
Indeed. It proves that the complexity of human existence really requires engaging with both perspectives to fully appreciate the entirety of our lived experience.